In this video, I'm going to cover everything that you need to do to fill out the IMWall project. In this project, we're going to focus on the type tool as well as the effects tool to make your type look very interesting. You're going to come up with 20 different words and phrases, and you're going to fill the entire canvas with them to make an interesting design that explains something about you. So, the first thing that you're going to need is 20 different words and phrases all made with the type tool. So on the left side of your screen in your tools, you're going to identify the type tool. It looks like a little T. It comes in a couple of different ways, both horizontally and vertically. You can choose whichever one you want, and that might be interesting to play around with later in this, but we're going to start out basic with the horizontal type tool. Once you have that, you can click and it'll add in a filler text. Start it off with just a word that describes you. Once you have your word, up in the top, you're going to press the check mark. That way, it is taken care of. If you ever have a reason to move it, you can use the Move tool and move that around. And you can use the Type tool to click back inside of it to be able to alter it again if you need to. I'm going to put it back to what it was, press OK, and then I'm going to add the rest of my words. Make sure that you make new layers for each one of them, because each one of them you're going to need to move around on their own. So now I have roughly 20 different phrases, each of them on a different layer, and able for me to move around and change about this design. So right now they're all a little bit small, but that's okay, because we're going to change them around, make them a lot more interesting. Notice how some of them I made capitalized, some of them I didn't, some of them I changed the words. I think I'm going to have to play around with them as I put them together. But I first wanted to start having 20 so that I can start making a design with them. So I'm going to focus in on one of them. I'm going to put artist here in the center, and I'll arrange the other ones in a bit. So now on artist, you can change many aspects about your words, but what you're going to need to do is use your type tool. I'll click back into the type tool, and I'll highlight the entire word or part of the word if I only want to affect part of it. Then at the top bar, we have our properties, and in our properties, we can change a lot of things about it, such as how they fit either fit flush left, flush right, or in the center, how big they are, what kind of type font it is, and some of the minor sub-effects of the type font. If you click on the type font, you can see that there's quite a lot of different things, and it changes while I am moving through this, so I can get an idea of what it looks like. On the right side of there, there's also an example of what it looks like. I personally write in cursive a lot, and I think cursive somewhat feels artsy, so I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to change the size. I can type in or select one of the preset ones. I can also click on the T and scrub left and right if I want to work it fluidly. I think artist is a big thing in my life, so I'm going to have that be a pretty big thing. I moved it using the Move tool, and I kind of like all these being different colors. So I'm going to come up to the color of it, and I'm going to change this into something that I like. I think reds are really quite lovely. So personally, I like deep dark reds. So now artist looks pretty nice. If I want to make more changes to it, there's a lot of other interesting things. I'm going to highlight this again, and over in the right side near my layers palette, we have a couple other tools, particularly the character one and the paragraph one. Character looks like a little A, paragraph looks like the paragraph symbol that's a backwards key. If I pull that one up, it has even more things that I can change about it, such as the height and width of the words, if I want to make it more or less wide. I kind of like writing mine really tall, but not as wide. I can also change the spacing between my letters. So if I want to give a little bit more space, I like it when they're connected. So we're going to kind of work with that. I'll put that back to 0, and then I'll let it go. I'll click out of there, and voila, Artist is nice and big. There's a couple other interesting tools. If, say, I wanted to select my words again, up at the top, we have a very strange tool that looks like a bent curve next to a T. That brings up some warp text properties, which I can set to a variety of different things. Like if I wanted it on the arc, so it's nice and curved and strange. That actually looks kind of cool. So I'm going to keep it, and I can do other things like come to edit and transform as usual. And I want to free transform this, and I'm going to curve it because I like the way that it moves there. So now I'm going to fast forward through this and play around with the other things and fill them out in interesting and amusing ways. So now I have an interesting design, and you can see that in the process of putting it all together, I had to add a couple more words to even fill it out even more. So I have probably about 30 rather than 20, but you'll see once you start moving your designs around and find out what works best for you as a whole. Last thing to do is to go through and make sure that the spacing between everything looks good, that there's no awkward spaces on near the edges or between any of the words. So you're going to have to do a lot of little fine touches, and you're going to need to play around with the colors to make sure that the colors work as a whole. I'm enjoying this red, white, and black design, but I think I can get something a little bit more unique if I played around with it a little bit. So I'm going to do just that and play around with the colors. If I want to change several at a time, I can go in the layers, highlight several of them, then come to character and change the colors as a group. So you can see that several of my designs are starting to change into blue, or I could change them into green. I'm not sure what I want, so I'm going to experiment around a little bit and get something something interesting. The very last step is to go through and start adding some interesting effects to each of the words. You don't have to do all of them, but do at least 5. I'm going to start off on artist, though I kind of already like how artist looks. But since it's nice and big, I think it's a good one to work with. So I'm going to find the layer in my layers palette. And then what I'm going to do is at the bottom, I'm going to come down to FX, which is short for effects. And that'll give a lot of different possible options to it. And just to make it stand out a little bit more, I'm going to play around with this. I'm going to, I don't know, maybe give it an outer glow? This will open up another window that I can add to it, and I can play around with this, adding a little bit extra noise. I can change the color to what I want the glow to actually be. I kind of like this yellow that we used earlier, but I'm going to make it just a little bit brighter. You can see as I play around with the tools, it's already adding and changing some things in the background, which I might have to move around and change some of my words, but that's okay. So you can see I've added an effect on that one, and now I can turn on or off that effect depending on what I want to do with it. Looks like it bumped into a couple of my other words, so I'm going to have to move those around, but let's not stop there. Let's keep on going with our momentum and play around with the other things in this design, and then we'll do one final move. And so, there we go, my word wall of 20 or so strange things that make up me, according to different people that you talk to. So go ahead and make your word wall, make it interesting, show off a little bit of your style, and give it a nice sense of variety, but also harmony, because it is an interesting representation of you, all the complex contradictions and unified strangeness.